Welcome, guys, to our show, to our podcast. Today, we've got a special guest. We've got Mark, the CEO of the NPSA. And I'm more than excited, Mark, to have you on the show because you bring you're the only one who has a perspective on container owners, but also on the storage market in the States, especially. So before I talk too much about yourself, can you please tell me more about yourself and the NPSA first?
Well, thank you for having me, Florian. I appreciate the comment that I'm the only one, but I highly doubt that. I'm sure there's skilled people who know much about this industry in all aspects. But, as far as I'm concerned, I spent about 30 or more years in this industry. I've had the opportunity to work in many different leasing companies where I've been challenged to not only sell containers, but lease containers. And I was involved more recently at a more senior level in one of the larger leasing companies. So I had the experience of understanding much of the issues, concerns, and strategies of some of the leasing companies. Over the last 2 years now, I've been the CEO here at the NPSA. And with regard to the NPSA, it is a nonprofit trade association. The acronym stands for the National Portable Storage Association. We currently have about 550 members, and that membership is made up of companies all over the world, both local, domestic organizations and international organizations. The membership we divide into two categories. We have associate members and we have regular members. The regular members is primarily what the focus of our association is. It is for us to have a trade organization that focuses on portable storage. And our associate members are companies that provide products and services to that segment or that industry. So on the associate member side, we have a lot of container owners, container suppliers, and of course, companies like insurance companies and others. Anything that would be helpful for someone running a small portable storage business. And then again, like our regular members, we cater to all types of portable storage, right? We have companies that provide portable storage in the form of marine containers, tank containers, refrigerated containers, storage trailers on wheels. And more recently in the industry, we've come to know companies like Pods, who are developing domestic containers primarily built for portable storage. For the purposes of this conversation, since our audience is, many of the audience members are strictly concerned about marine containers, we'll focus mostly on the international marine container segment and providers, and also the companies in portable storage who are using just marine containers.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Thanks for explaining, Mark. Before we dive into different questions, when I'm thinking of the NPSA, I always think about the container tariffs. Are these still an issue? Because I remember we shared so many of your updates, and you provided us with so much valuable information in the last weeks and months. Is that still an issue for you guys?
So I'd love to say, well, it's certainly not an issue at this moment. And as a trade association, one of the biggest things that we can do for our members is to advocate on their behalf, whether it be local government, federal government, anything that we can do to help our members educate the public, communicate safety and purpose for our equipment. When this whole thing came about on the tariffs, quite frankly, it caught me by surprise. And it was actually one of the issues that we could really represent all of our members, 100%. In so many cases, we have regular members who are dealing with local municipal issues. We have Canadian members who are dealing with the Canadian government versus members here in the US dealing with the US government. So it's very hard to represent everyone, but the container tariffs was an example of something that we are, number one, very proud of, in conjunction with our members and also industry colleagues. We fought against the tariffs starting at the end of 2017. And so the short answer is we're currently past that, but my experience in the entire 2-year process is that it can come back.
Yeah.
And although I don't think it will, there were 4 tranches of import products coming in from China that the administration here focused on. We were on the first tranche of items. We were successful in defeating that and being removed, but then the government put us back on tranche 3. So yeah, I believe at this point, the administration here in the United States has basically put tariffs on almost everything coming into the United States. And they've eliminated only a small number of items, and containers being one of them, Harmonized Code 8609.
Yeah.
And we don't suspect, we've made argument 2 times to have it removed. They removed it 2 times. I hope they've convinced themselves that it shouldn't be on. So I hope we don't ever see that again.
Yeah, good to know that, Mark. And from one fight to another fight, basically. I mean, we're talking or recording the session on Zoom right now. Zoom and video calls are the new normal in times of COVID-19. How did COVID impact the MPSA?
Oh, wow. That's, I mean, listen, unlike any other social, economic, natural disaster that any of us have ever experienced in any of our businesses, this is the first time in my lifetime that I could say that this is something that has impacted every single business around the entire world.
Crazy.
And so, you know, if it didn't affect your business directly, it certainly had an impact on your supply chain or your customer base in one way or another. Nobody was immune to this. And by the way, the effects on your business aren't always negative, right? During this pandemic, because I've had experience using various video conferencing softwares in the last 6 months that I've never used in my entire life. So we're doing things today, obviously, much different. With regard to the MPSA, we pride ourselves on running our events.
Good topic.
And yeah, and we run 2 events a year. We run a conference and trade show in the spring, and we run a educational fall seminar in the fall. And 2 days ago, we canceled our fall seminar for September. We already canceled our conference and trade show. The networking within our association is by many thought to believe the most benefit, or the largest benefit that we could have as an association. And we've lost that opportunity 2 times. So I would say that's how we've been most affected. But we've shifted, you know, like all companies, you can't stand still. We've kind of shifted our dynamic. We've made every effort to be a leader in communicating to our members about information. We ran webinars multiple times with regard to government funding, helping companies deal with some of the issues around COVID, whether it be human resource issues or marketing, how marketing has changed. We've done things like that, and we've tried to be a valuable source of information, education, you know, and so this is where we're headed now at this point, and we'll continue to do that for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned, that like transparency or being transparent in communication is one of the most important aspects, right? In such times that you communicate clearly with your members. And yeah, to share a story from our side. I mean, for us, it's basically the same. I just remember when we went to visit a location just around the corner here, signed a contract for our customer conference here in Hamburg, usually in September. And just 2 weeks afterwards, we got hit by the first wave of like COVID-19, had to cancel the event. But for us, the way we see it, it's also an opportunity, right? I mean, we talk on a Zoom call right now, and we try to turn our event into an online event now. We invite everyone on September the 3rd to join us for the Digital Container Summit. And with the summit, we are suddenly not limited by people don't have to book flights. There's no jet lag anymore and like expensive hotels. Like everyone can join us from their homes basically. So I think it depends on the angle you look at the crisis. But sure, I'm sure. I mean, you represent so many storage companies and other partners. How did the crisis affect you guys or the members specifically?
So I'm smiling at what you just said because, as I said, I've been working here at the NPSA for less than 3 years, I believe, and so most of my experience has not been running an association. So I'm learning, and I'm learning a lot from our members. As soon as COVID hit, I would say we were kind of stuck in the mud for a couple of weeks, and I've had a few members come to me and say, "Hey, listen, you need to be telling us what's happening. I'm concerned that I'm not hearing anything from the industry," and so that kind of woke me up a little bit. And so we're transforming. We're transforming and we're learning all at the same time. So so our members, just like the NPSA, our members have been impacted greatly as well. I mean, when we look at our membership, right, we look at it in sort of two segments. We have our international members who are an integral part of supplying marine containers to our regular members, right, because that's the lifeblood of their business. And, if we look specifically at container owners, I would say that, and not discounting how badly they've been impacted, but I would say that based on the information I'm reading and what I'm hearing from some of the big leasing companies who own more than 50% of every container in the world, I would say that their impact is somewhat limited. I've heard some calls recently where, utilization rates remain fairly steady. Sale pricing on containers, used containers, has remained fairly steady. In fact, in some places in the world, demand has actually gone up slightly. And these are all key aspects of a container leasing company being profitable, right? If you look at the key aspects, it's maintaining high utilization, sale price at the end of a container life, rates. Rates are directly related to new production pricing of equipment in the Far East, and new production pricing has actually creeped up slightly in the last month or two. So, those three pieces haven't changed very much for them. I will say that growth, which is also a key portion of profitability, especially moving forward, I think growth has been slowed dramatically. So they haven't been hit so much with all of these other things, but certainly their growth is going to be stymied for a while. I remember earlier when COVID first hit, we were looking at about 800 to 900 brand new containers still sitting at factory, and today I recently checked and the numbers are about the same. So a lot of equipment that was purchased or built on speculation is not moving. On hires are certainly down, and I think much of it is because of all the uncertainty.
Yeah. Is it due to the blank sailings as well? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, well, and I read recently that one of the big lines has cut more than 25% of their ship capacity. So whether it's blank sailings, cutting of ship capacity, the entire supply chain has been disrupted. Starting with the closing of the factories in February, right? We had Chinese New Year, the factories were closed,
yeah.
And then they remained closed for a portion after that. And so exports were, sort of stopped. And even though here in the US, we were still moving, we wanted product. And then finally, when China got back up and running, we shut down. And so then our demand for imports stopped. So, the positioning of equipment around the world has been tremendously impacted. And, I heard, and for the first time in my life, I heard that there were large vessels of empty containers positioning equipment to the United States. And that's something I've never heard in my life. So, obviously things have changed. And hopefully, up until last week, I was getting the feeling we were moving sort of in a better direction, getting back to a little bit of normalcy. But now you have states in the United States that are closing back down because they're seeing increase in coronavirus. And on the uncertainty portion of this whole thing is really the toughest thing to deal with.
That's a good point you make. The current situation in the States. How does COVID infect all these small business owners supplying portable storage in their regional markets? How is it going for them with
Yeah,
lock?
so aside, obviously there's a concern about supply of containers into their business,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't seem to be such a big issue at the moment. We've seen some changes in supply, some slight changes in price, but the biggest impact to our regular membership, those who are providing portable storage to domestic end users, um, clearly the economy has impacted their business. But two things that I want to recognize with our frontline regular membership is that very few, if any, I think I maybe heard one company that actually was forced to shut down. But given the quote unquote essential services that were needed during the coronavirus period, many of our members were able to stay open because they either were providing a service to an essential service, or they were part of a supply chain which involves essential services. So many of them were able to stay open. So that was a good thing, right? Unlike many businesses that shut down for 3 months, which is devastating.
So
So our
so
members were able. Go ahead.
Okay, no, all good. So, I mean, it seems like, especially your member, like perfectly, or at least did a good job adapting to the situation. How did they do it? I mean, employees probably worked from home, but was that even, or is it even possible for your members that people stay at home?
Yeah, now obviously there's a lot of physical work involved with a lot of our regular members. So yeah, their business changed. Just coming back to the business portion, I will say that
Yeah.
many of them were able to stay open. And although they did see a downturn in business, there were some good things to take away from this. Number one is they saw increased business in areas they never saw before, right? So we saw demand from hospitals and COVID testing sites and different things like that. So that was a whole new business that sort of blossomed because of this. And so other businesses suffered. But even today, we see that some of these companies are actually finding new ways to provide portable storage to all kinds of companies. And I can give you some examples. One of our members mentioned to me that a school system contacted them recently, and they said, hey, we're thinking about going back to school in September, and we've got to deal with this social distancing issue. We can't have 30 or 40 desks in a particular classroom. What are we going to do with all this? And so they have a need to store furniture. Just like restaurants can't open up and have full capacity, they're going to need to store furniture. These are just some examples of where new business is coming up and different demands are coming up.
Yeah, good point that you made. Especially with like having our members in mind. Most of them are either container owners and users. What would you recommend these, especially container traders, probably who sell locally in the States? What would you recommend them to remain competitive in the coming months? Like, what did like good NPSA member companies do that you could recommend to everyone else?
So if we look at our container suppliers, we can break that down into two categories, right? We can break that down to the container owners, which own the majority of containers in the world, right? And that's the leasing companies and the liner services. There is a group of companies out there that we have as members, and those are container trading companies and companies that specific, marine containers have become such an important part of portable storage that companies have emerged that all they do is they build equipment in the Far East specifically for the portable storage industry and then position it directly to buyers. So that's not the primary business of the leasing companies or the liner services. So companies who are using marine containers have the ability to use the container owners as a supply source of used equipment. And also many of these container brokers, traders, and buyers of new equipment, for new container supply. It gives them the ability to have multiple products for different uses. But I think, the biggest challenge for some of those companies has always been getting the container in the right place at the right time. And what's happening right now is factories in the Far East are starting to shut down for a second time because there's just not enough demand to keep building. So, and the timing of this is really bad. So there's a couple things, right? Obviously, there's a disruption in cargo flow. And the movement of a container from the Far East, specifically new, let's talk about new containers coming into the domestic market. They have traditionally come in on a one-way program with many of these liner companies. And the liner companies were always extremely happy to accept these one-way containers because for every container they didn't own and brought here on a one-way basis with cargo, they could leave it behind and not pay that empty positioning back to the Far East. But because of all this container disruption, and you remember I told you earlier that we, for the first time, I saw shiploads of empty containers coming here. You know, the ability for these companies to entice the liner services to use their equipment rather than their own is becoming more and more difficult. And I talk about now the factories that are shutting down for a second time. Those companies who were planning to build more equipment so they can then position it into the United States and other areas around the world. I think many of the other countries and continents around the world see their peak season in domestic storage start around July, August, September, a lot for the retail business in the fall and so forth. And now with the factories being shut, the expectations to build containers and get them here in the demand market is going to be extremely challenging. So I think that's their major concern at this point.
Yeah, that's so interesting what you mentioned. Like picking up 2 points. I mean, we talked about probably 5 minutes ago about like people working from home, about all these Zoom calls. But at the same time, most people in our industry don't have the chance to work from home because they have to be physically present at their job and like move containers around the world. We as Container Exchange, we have seen like huge demand in the last weeks and months because people were looking for transparency and for efficiency, for maybe a plan B or a second option other than their usual partners, maybe in times of high volatility. What's your opinion on digital solutions in, especially container logistics or in our industries? How do you see the entire digitalization topic?
Yeah, so last year our fall seminar was themed. I'm not thinking off the top of my head, but it had specifically to do with digitization.
Yeah.
And many of our speakers, talked about software solutions, digital solutions, and all that sort of thing. So we as an association, we recognize completely that, this is our future, right? At least to some extent, and I would imagine a great extent, right? Whether we like it or not, it's coming, and it's going to be here, and it's going to be here to stay. I think, and we're seeing that all around us, right? We talked about it with software solutions and video conferencing.
Yeah.
I saw more packages arrive at my front door over the last 4 months through ordering online. So that, even the COVID situation has changed many of our ways of thinking.
Yeah.
We were buying our groceries for 3 months being hand delivered to us, right? Which is a complete change from getting in your car and going to the store and spending that time being able to touch and feel products and everything else. So the world is changing. And in fact, I think COVID is probably changing us probably faster than we want. Sometimes you need to have a little kick in the butt to make things move in the right direction. And so with all of that said, how is it affecting us? So we've seen attempts for digital solutions in our industry for a very long time. We've seen companies, and I know that you've recently launched a trading platform as well. But we've seen trading platforms, we've seen gray box use, we've seen various different things, interchange of equipment in the depots, sharing equipment, photography, many different things. But for some reason, some stuff has stuck. But for some reason, and I can't quite put my finger on it, we are as an industry very slow to accept digital solutions. And we're changing, no doubt. When I look back on my career, there used to be in any given leasing company, there were dozens of technical people. Today, those technical people are far gone. There may be only a handful of people who actually really understand technical issues. A lot of it is sort of paper pushing on desks today, and a lot of that comes from photography and other digital solutions that are presented through them, EDI and et cetera. But so the question is, why is our industry so slow over time? And we're moving in that direction, but we are still slow. And I think one of the bigger reasons, and this is really a guess on my part, only based on my experience, we still, if you look at the three areas in which you can impact your business, right? You've got to, by introducing a digital solution, you have a process that you want to change. You want to change the operational aspect of things, and you want to change the customer opinion, right? And so when I go back to my shopping online experience, the entire process is quick, easy. The only thing I can't do is touch things. And then when you look at the operational aspect, it's completely enhanced. I don't move from my seat and the stuff, guy rings my doorbell. How great is that? And then, of course, the customer satisfaction part. There's a great satisfaction on not having to do anything, but also, you lose a little bit there. But there's definite progression in each one of those areas. In our industry, somehow, I think the operational aspect of our business cannot be figured out. And I don't know why that is, but if you're selling equipment online, or if you're trying to interchange equipment online, you still have to deal with the trucker going into a facility, making the exchange, having the equipment available. And so maybe it's because third parties are introducing the solutions and not the asset owners. I'm not sure, but it's going to come. There's no doubt about it. It will be there. When is really the question.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And when I was taking notes, I wrote down progression, because I think so many companies or people in every industry, they're trying to disrupt everything. But I think it's more of a slow process. And it's not, the technology will not take over and make us all jobless. But I think it's more a like digitally supported decision making. Like digitalization can help, aggregate data, make decisions, make better decisions. Reduce risk, for instance. But I'm 100% agree with you that it cannot replace the guy that has to check like every container to solve repair issues, for instance. So that fully makes sense. And
well, keep in mind, Florian, you have unlike buying new, anytime you have liability, quality, and those things involved, it's hard to just accept that everything is going to be okay, especially because historically we've had so many issues. I think we have of dinosaurs maybe in this industry, who knows? Yeah. But I think as we get an introduction of more new blood into our industry, we're going to see the mindset change.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. I mean, especially talking about our customers at Exchange, what they value the most is, like, of course, it's easy for them to find new partners or to like sell containers online. That's nice. But what they value the most is the process support, that they don't have to like follow up on invoices, calculate per diems, manage every like minor like damage manually. But I think on these fronts, there's still so much progress to be made, and it's interesting to see where we as a company, but like also we as an entire industry will be in 5 or 10 years. I mean, I'm still new to the industry. I'm learning every day. I'm like so thankful, Mark. I'm also for you to that you take your time to inform all of us about the NPSA first of all, but also the impact of COVID and your opinion on digital solutions. Do you have any other question, something that you would like to share with our audience?
Not specifically. I would like to thank you for allowing me this opportunity. Any chance I get to promote the National Portable Storage Association, I appreciate that. I will just reinforce the fact that we are virtually a one-of-a-kind association. We were born from an industry that was born from finding a way to use equipment that was no longer needed in the international business, and we're growing. And anyone who is any part of this supply chain, I encourage you to look into joining as members of the NPSA.
Yeah, we'll definitely add links to your website when we publish that podcast. And yeah, Mark, I'm like more than happy. It was such a pleasure for me to talk to you. I learned a lot. I'm pretty sure that it was more than interesting for our audience as well. Yeah, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being a guest on our show.
Thank you, Florian. You stay safe.
You too. Thanks. All the best.